This tree here at Nuga Cinnamon Grand is 200 years old. Today, as we celebrate World Conservation Day, we thought it would be great to find out more about the Nuga tree, the banyan tree that's unique to the Indian subcontinent. Its unique growth patterns and aerial roots create a complex network of interconnected trunks which form the perfect microhabitat for insects, birds and small mammals. Now, this tree, which has been part of the ecosystem here at Nuga and been protected for 2 centuries, doesn't just sustain the microhabitat around it, but also enables the essence of the village to be brought into the city. Welcome to Kaleidoscope, where we are positive, daring, different, and later on in the show is an oncologist, a public policy advocate, and a brilliant designer with a hearing impairment. A massive Nuga Tree size thank you to our wonderful partners on the show, Srilanka Live, CDB, The Daily Morning and Don's Tea. Kaleidoscope is on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn. Subscribe and follow us if you like our show.
You can now start a CDB iDeposit digital fixed deposit and experience a range of special benefits from CDB.
And we take a look at the week that was on our CDB Snapshot. Sri Lanka's national inflation eases to 10.8% in June, bringing prices to levels last seen 2 years ago. Food inflation decreases to 2.5% in June from May's 15.8%. India launches its third moon mission, Chandrayaan-3, aiming to be the first to land near the moon's south pole. Nepal makes history as the first South Asian country to recognize same-sex marriage. 4 African girls create a generator that produces 6 hours of electricity using 1 litre of urine as fuel. Elon Musk rebrands Twitter as X, an everything app. Greta Gerwig's Barbie movie enjoys the largest opening weekend of 2023, earning $155 million. Sully the gorilla, who was thought to be male, surprises zookeepers by having a baby.
You focus on your goals. We will take care of the risks. Srilanka Life.
Welcome to Srilanka Live News Capsule. We've been hearing some not so great stories coming out of the health sector and at the same time hearing about the mass migration of doctors to greener pastures. Last year, about 700 doctors, including several medical consultants, migrated. Currently, Sri Lanka has only about 20,000 serving doctors and 2,800 consultants for the entire country. Needless to say, patients suffer. On the Pethiyagoda pages today is scientist, conservationist and public policy advocate Rohan Pethiyagoda, who has some interesting insights. We've been hearing some horror stories, some not so great stories about our health system, which for a long time has been exceptionally good, doing very well when you look at South Asia. What's the reason for this sort of coming down in the tracks?
I think the problem is we've been seeing a shortage of drugs, because the government has no money to buy the drugs. And we've seen a drain of doctors. A lot of senior doctors have up sticks and moved overseas because they're worried about the future of the country. And I think from both these aspects, the health system is under pressure. Sri Lanka spends, on each of us, per capita, 1,000 rupees a month on health. Now, what can you buy for 1,000 rupees in terms of medicines, for example? Even if you look at inpatients, if you put all the money in the health budget to caring for the 75,000 inpatients at any one time, that's as many hospital beds as we have, so it's roughly the number of inpatients. That translates into about 10,000 rupees per day per inpatient. That includes the accommodation, the food, the nursing, the medical care, the medicines, surgeries, x-rays, laboratory tests. You can't do it. If you go into a private hospital for the same service, you pay 10 times as much. So the government's providing a very cheap service, and we have to accept that its quality is going to be faulty.
Most of these doctors work or have studied in the free education system. Now, how do we keep them back?
The obvious thing is people want them bonded. I don't think bonding is going to work. It didn't work the last time it was tried a generation ago. We have two things that have changed since the bonding era. One is that the majority of doctors now are women. Women are not very likely to up sticks and move as are men. So at least the women consultants and doctors are more likely to remain. I think this is a temporary thing you're seeing in senior male doctors who are pushing off. Our expenditure on higher education is about 60 billion rupees a year. In return for that 60 billion rupees, we have 30,000 bachelor's degrees awarded every year, about 10,000 postgraduate degrees. So if you take that as a whole, for those 40,000 annual degrees that we award, our expenditure per student is about 1.5 million rupees. So to put somebody through university, 1.5 million being 5,000 US dollars, 4,500 US dollars, this is less than a term's fees if you go overseas for the whole degree course. So we give really good value for money, and Sri Lankan degrees are as good as any in the world. They're really good. How do we incentivize people to remain in the country rather than fleeing? I think we just got to make it worth their while. They want jobs that pay well and earn respect. I think in many cases they get those. And I think we just had to establish a market to retain people rather than forcing them to stay through legal instruments and bonds and things. I think that's crazy.
And here's our market sketch for the week. After 2 weeks of upward gains and higher daily turnover at the Colombo Stock Exchange, the all-share price index remained virtually unchanged this week, with the average daily turnover rates dropping as well. WTI oil prices moved up this week to a 3-month high of $80 per barrel due to output cuts and US gasoline demand. Gold prices held firm and were at just below $2,000 per ounce. With the world reopening, how is Asia's economy faring? The ADB's Asian Development Outlook maintains the regional growth forecast at 4.8% for 2023 and slightly lower at 4.7% for 2024. Headline inflation is returning to pre-pandemic averages, and global demand shows industrial activity in export-oriented economies weakening. But tourism recovery is in full swing and financial conditions have improved since March. The recovery and growth of China is crucial to growth in the region. Global commodity prices are leveling, and although monetary policy remains tight, interest rate hikes have slowed. Celebrating World Conservation Day, here are some species who were reintroduced into existence, and they've all been let out successfully into the wild. Meet opera's rare male soprano, Samuel Marino, who is of Venezuelan heritage and makes his Glyndebourne debut this week. In the past few years, Sri Lanka has had about 30,000 new cancer cases diagnosed annually. In 2019 alone, there were nearly 31,850. This means the incidence of cancer in Sri Lanka's population is 146 per 100,000, a doubling from 25 years ago. Childhood cancer too is increasing, with about 1,000 new cases diagnosed annually, and of these, 7 out of 10 are from low-income families. Visiting Sri Lanka recently for the launch of Suwa Arana, Sri Lanka's first paediatric palliative care centre, was the Chief of Oncology at the Good Samaritan Hospital, Los Angeles, diplomat of the American Board of Internal Medicine, Hematology and Medical Oncology, and partner LA Cancer Network, Dr. Lasika Seneviratne, who is also the head of the board of the Sri Lanka Medical Association of North America Western Region, and a co-founder of Suwa Arana. What false beliefs or myths are there about cancer?
It's mainly related to the treatments of cancer more than anything, and I think that comes out of fear. A lot of people think that cancer is treated with chemotherapy and that chemotherapies are poison and they're very toxic. So a lot of people then tend to avoid that type of mainstream of treatment. But there are other types of medicine, naturopathic, homeopathic, Ayurvedic. Now, I'm in no way to comment on those types of medicines, but they also offer treatments for cancer. What needs to be understood is that cancer treatments are really advancing. We don't treat everything with chemotherapy these days. There's a lot of newer therapies like immune treatment. You use your own immune system to fight the cancer. There are more targeted therapies, pill forms of therapies that are highly efficacious.
You've repeatedly said that most cancers are curable.
We are making huge strides in some of the cancers such as breast, lung, colon cancers. But vital to that, if you are to cure them, is to detect them early and treat them early. Some of the childhood cancers like acute leukemias are highly curable.
What are some of the new findings or R&D findings where cancer is concerned?
As we learn more and more about the mechanisms of what drives these cancers, we are detecting those targets to which we then tailor make a treatment. So as opposed to the shotgun approach, I would call the newer therapies more like a drone attack, where they go looking for the enemy, bind to the enemy, and kill the enemy right there. The key there is that the treatments are very much tailor-made, custom to that patient's cancer. So two patients may have breast cancer, but be getting entirely different treatments based on those targets.
You've been in the oncology space both in Sri Lanka and LA. What are the major differences you see in terms of perceptions and attitudes about cancer?
Early detection means everything between being a curable cancer versus an incurable cancer. So people have to come to accept screening tools such as mammography and colonoscopies, where there is a tool and you can detect the cancer way before it becomes problematic, then you kind of nip it in the bud.
In LA, you work in a very developed healthcare sector. Now, Sri Lanka is not on par, but given what we have, how can we optimize on the facilities, the care and the treatment facilities available for patients with cancer?
Well, I think our doctors are superb. They're very well trained, but I see a lot of people having to manage with very limited supply of essential medicines, chemotherapies and other medicines. I think providing more of those resources would be greatly beneficial for better outcomes. There's only one pediatric cancer center for the whole country, so having more of these centers closer to their place where they live, people live, would be wonderful, because then they don't have to travel hundreds and hundreds of miles. Cancer is always evolving, and there's always newer treatments coming. So I say, how can we get tomorrow's treatments made available today for these patients free of charge? Clinical trials would be a great opportunity also for Sri Lanka to explore. Some of these trials are now becoming more global.
Lasika, thank you very much for being with us today, and also good luck in all the work you do. You are so blessed. We have a little gift from our sponsor here, Don's Tea,
Thank you
for you
so
to
much.
take back with you.
Thank you, and thanks for having me.
Today we showcase an amazing young woman who designs, sews, embroiders and does everything in between to produce the most magnificent clothes for the young and trendy. I'm with Anuki Cook, who is hearing impaired but never let that stand in the way. At her store here in Colombo, look at these magnificently beautiful dresses that makes everyone feel like a princess. She was just 15 when, under the tutelage of Sister Delphine at Holy Family Convent, Anuki started learning the basics of sewing, embroidery and even smocking. She became so clever at it that she would watch television and smock, not once looking at what she was doing, to produce a perfectly beautiful work of art. Not ever allowing her hearing impairment to impair her abilities, she took off to England at 18. Got her fashion degree from Manchester City College and returned to Sri Lanka to launch her business designing children's clothes. Expanding her design portfolio and launching her self-titled label Anuki in 1998, this courageous young woman then began supplying to Odell, which she did for 15 years. Now, besides her designs being a must-have in every teenager's wardrobe, Anuki makes real-life princesses' dreams come true with her bridals. Anuki is a true inspiration to young people everywhere, especially those with disabilities. Follow your dream. It's not an option. Happy Conservation Week. We'll see you next week.